My girlfriend said she needed space for her mental health the day before my sister's engagement, so I gave her all the space she wanted and disappeared forever. Subscribe to the channel and like the video to see more stories like this 28 years old. That number represents independence, stability, and the wisdom to know when someone is taking advantage of your kindness. My name is Marcus, and for the past 3 years, I've been working as a software engineer at a tech startup in Austin, Texas. My downtown apartment was my pride and joy, a modern 2-bedroom place with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline, something I'd worked incredibly hard to afford on my own. I met Sarah at a coffee shop near my office 2 years ago. She was studying psychology at UT, working part-time as a barista while finishing her master's degree. What attracted me wasn't just her smile or the way she'd remember my order, but how she seemed to genuinely care about people. She'd ask about my day, remember details about my work projects, and had this way of making everyone around her feel heard and valued. Sarah moved in with me after dating for 8 months. It felt natural, comfortable. She was struggling financially with student loans and part-time work, so I suggested she focus on her studies while I handled most of the expenses. Looking back, I realized that was my first mistake. Not the generosity itself, but assuming it would be temporary and appreciated. Our rent was $800 a month for the apartment, plus utilities that usually ran another $300. Groceries, streaming services, internet, her car insurance that I added to my plan. I covered about 75% of our living expenses without thinking twice about it. Sarah contributed what she could from her barista job, maybe $400, $500 a month, but I never made her feel bad about the disparity. I earned good money, she was in school, and I believed we were building something together. My family loved Sarah. My parents, who live about an hour outside Austin, welcomed her into family dinners and holiday celebrations. My younger sister Emma, who was 25 and working as a marketing coordinator in Dallas, absolutely adored Sarah. They'd text each other constantly, share makeup tips, and Sarah even helped Emma prepare for job interviews. "Marcus, she's perfect for you," Emma told me last Christmas. "I can see how happy you make each other, and she fits right into our crazy family." That meant everything to me. Family has always been my anchor. Growing up, my parents taught Emma and me that family comes first, that we show up for each other no matter what. It's why I never missed Emma's birthday parties, why I drove to Dallas when she needed help moving apartments, why I was the first person she called when she got engaged to her boyfriend Jake 3 months ago. "Marcus, I'm getting married!" Emma had screamed through the phone, and I could hear Jake laughing in the background. "We're having an engagement party next month, and I need you and Sarah there. It's going to be small, just close family and friends, but you two are absolutely essential." Sarah was sitting beside me on the couch when Emma called. I watched her face light up as she heard the news, and she immediately started making plans. "We need to go shopping for the perfect gift," she said after I hung up, "and I want to help with decorations if Emma needs it." This is so exciting. For weeks, Sarah talked about Emma's engagement party. She bought a beautiful navy blue dress specifically for the occasion, spent time researching gift ideas, and even coordinated with my mom about bringing a side dish. The party was scheduled for a Saturday evening at my parents' house, with close family and Jake's parents. Emma had been planning every detail for weeks, but 3 days before the party, something shifted in Sarah's demeanor. She became distant, spending more time on her phone and less time engaging in our usual conversations. When I asked if everything was okay, she'd give me vague answers about school stress and her thesis deadline. "I'm just overwhelmed," she'd say, avoiding eye contact. "There's a lot going on in my head right now." I tried to be understanding. Graduate school is stressful, and I knew she'd been working on a particularly challenging research project. I offered to help however I could, taking over all the grocery shopping, handling laundry, even suggesting she take a break from her part-time job if money was the issue. "You don't need to worry about finances," I told her Tuesday night as we were getting ready for bed. "Just focus on your mental health and finishing school. I've got everything else covered." She smiled at me then, but it felt forced. "You're amazing, Marcus. I don't deserve someone as patient as you." That should have been my warning sign. In my experience, when someone starts talking about what they don't deserve, they're usually preparing to prove themselves right. Thursday morning, the day before Emma's engagement party, I woke up to find Sarah already dressed and packing a suitcase. My stomach dropped as I watched her fold clothes with an efficiency that suggested this wasn't a spontaneous decision. "Sarah, what's going on?" She didn't look at me as she continued packing. "I need space to think. I'm going to LA for a while. This is about my mental health. Don't be selfish." The words hit me like a physical blow. After everything we'd built together, after all the support I'd given her, after promising to be at my sister's most important celebration, she was leaving, and she was calling me selfish for questioning it. I stood there in my boxers, watching the woman I thought I knew pack her life into a suitcase, and felt something fundamental shift inside me. This wasn't about mental health or needing space. This was about something else entirely. And the timing, the day before my sister's engagement party, felt deliberately cruel. But instead of fighting, instead of pleading or demanding explanations, I simply said, I understand. Because in that moment, I finally did understand. I understood that I'd been fooling myself about who Sarah really was, and more importantly, I understood exactly what I needed to do about it. Sarah left for the airport within an hour, barely making eye contact as she wheeled her suitcase toward the door. I'll call you when I'm ready to talk, she said, her voice carrying a tone I'd never heard before, cold and detached, like she was speaking to a stranger rather than someone who'd been supporting her for over a year. I watched from our living room window as the Uber pulled away, carrying her toward whatever was waiting in Los Angeles. The silence that followed felt deafening. For the first time in months, I was completely alone in the apartment we'd shared, surrounded by the life we'd built together and the sudden crushing realization that maybe it had all been one-sided, but I didn't have time to process the emotional devastation. Emma's engagement party was tomorrow, and I had to figure out how to tell my family that Sarah wouldn't be there. More importantly, I had to show up for my sister despite feeling like my world had just been turned upside down. I called Emma that afternoon. Hey, there's been a change of plans. Sarah won't be able to make it tomorrow. What? Why not? Is she sick? Emma's disappointment was immediate and genuine. Marcus, she was so excited about this party. She texted me just 3 days ago asking if I needed help with anything. That detail hit me like a punch to the gut. 3 days ago, Sarah was still planning to attend. 3 days ago, she was still pretending to care about my family's milestone moment. She had to go to LA for a family emergency. I lied, not ready to expose the truth. Oh no, I hope everything's okay. Tell her we'll miss her, and that we completely understand. The kindness in Emma's voice made my chest tight. My family had embraced Sarah completely, and she'd just abandoned all of them without a second thought. But I pushed those feelings down and focused on being the brother Emma needed. The engagement party was beautiful. Emma glowed with happiness. Jake's family was warm and welcoming, and my parents had outdone themselves with decorations and food. I smiled, made toasts, and celebrated my sister's love while feeling completely hollow inside. Several people asked about Sarah, and each time I repeated the family emergency story, feeling the lie burn a little more. She would have loved this, my mom said during a quiet moment, squeezing my arm. Sarah always talks about how much she values family. I'm sure she's heartbroken to miss it. If only she knew the truth. It wasn't until Sunday morning, scrolling mindlessly through social media while nursing a hangover from drowning my sorrows after the party, that I discovered what Sarah's mental health break really looked like. Her Instagram story showed her at a trendy rooftop bar in West Hollywood, laughing and clinking champagne glasses with someone whose face was just out of frame. My blood ran cold as I screenshot the image and stared at it. While my sister was celebrating her engagement, while my family was asking about Sarah and missing her presence, she was living it up in LA without a care in the world. This wasn't mental health recovery. This was a vacation. But the real revelation came Monday afternoon when I got a text from my friend Jake, not Emma's fiance, but a different Jake who worked in marketing and had dated Sarah briefly before we met. He'd moved to LA 6 months ago for a job opportunity. Hey man, weird question, but is Sarah your girlfriend? I just saw her at Catch LA last night with my ex Tyler. Looked pretty cozy if you know what I mean. Wasn't sure if you guys had broken up or what. Tyler. I knew that name. Sarah had mentioned an ex-boyfriend named Tyler who lived in California. Someone she'd dated for 2 years before moving to Austin for graduate school. Someone she claimed had trust issues and was too controlling, which was why their relationship ended. I stared at that text for a full 10 minutes. Feeling everything click into place. Sarah hadn't gone to LA for mental health. She hadn't even gone alone. She'd coordinated this trip with Tyler, her ex-boyfriend, and used my sister's engagement party as the perfect cover story. The mental health excuse wasn't just manipulative, it was calculated. She knew I wouldn't argue with someone claiming to struggle mentally. She knew my compassionate nature would make me supportive rather than suspicious, and she was probably counting on me to wait patiently for her return, continuing to pay all our bills while she explored rekindling things with her ex. Thanks for the heads up, I texted back to Jake. We're taking a break right now. That was an understatement. I was beginning to realize that while I thought we were building a life together, Sarah had been keeping one foot out the door the entire time. Every time I paid her portion of rent, every time I covered groceries or utilities, every time I made her life easier so she could focus on school, I was actually funding her ability to have other options. Tuesday evening, Sarah finally called. I was in my home office, looking at our shared expenses spreadsheet and calculating exactly how much money I'd invested in our relationship over over the past year. The number was staggering. Over $20, $7 in rent, utilities, groceries, and various other expenses that I'd covered without hesitation. Marcus, hi. Her voice sounded cautious, like she was testing the waters. How are you doing? I'm fine. How's your mental health retreat going? There was a pause. It's good. Really good. I'm getting the space I needed to think clearly about things. That's wonderful. I saw your Instagram story. Catch LA looks like a nice place for mental health recovery. Another pause. Longer this time. Marcus, I can explain. You don't need to explain anything to me, Sarah. You needed space, and I respect that. Take all the time you need. My tone was calm, almost pleasant, which seemed to confuse her. I think she was expecting anger or demands for answers. Instead, I was giving her exactly what she'd asked for. Complete and total space. Oh, okay. Well, I was thinking maybe we could talk about when I might come back, and Sarah, you said you needed space to think. You shouldn't feel pressured to make any decisions quickly. Take your time, really. What she couldn't see was that while she was taking her time in LA, I was making decisions of my own. Each day she was gone. Each social media post showing her mental health break, looking more like a romantic getaway. I was getting clarity about exactly how much respect she had for me, for my family, and for the life I'd built for us. By Thursday, exactly 1 week after she'd left, I'd made my choice. Sarah wanted space. I was going to give her more space than she'd ever imagined possible. And unlike her, when I made a decision, I didn't need anyone's permission to follow through with it. Friday morning, I took a personal day from work and began what I can only describe as the most eye-opening investigation of my life. If Sarah could be strategic about her deception, I could be strategic about my response. I started by going through our shared digital footprint with the methodical precision that made me good at my job. Our phone plan showed her location services were still active, and LA was definitely her destination. But more interesting were her data usage patterns. Hours of FaceTime calls that hadn't been with me, and activity on dating apps that I didn't even know she'd reinstalled. Apparently, her mental health break required quite a bit of swiping. I logged into our shared Amazon account and found recent orders that painted an even clearer picture. A sexy red dress ordered 3 days before she left, not something you pack for soul searching. Expensive lingerie with overnight shipping to a West Hollywood address. A bottle of cologne that definitely wasn't for me, considering I'm allergic to most fragrances. Then I found the smoking gun in our shared Google Photos. Sarah had been automatically backing up her pictures, including screenshots of text conversations with Tyler that dated back 2 months. 2 months of I miss you and maybe we made a mistake and planning for her visit to LA. 2 months of coordinating a reunion while I was paying her bills and believing her complaints about stress and uncertainty about our future. Can't wait to see you, baby, read one message from Tyler. I've got the whole weekend planned. We can finally talk about trying again without distractions. I just need to handle things with Marcus first, she'd replied. He's been so supportive. I feel bad about this, but I can't keep pretending I'm not thinking about us. You deserve to be happy, not just grateful, Tyler responded. Come to LA and remember what it feels like to be with someone who actually excites you. I sat in my living room, staring at those messages, feeling a strange combination of rage and relief. Rage at the betrayal, but relief at finally understanding that none of this was about my inadequacy. Sarah hadn't left because I wasn't enough. She'd left because she was fundamentally dishonest and had been planning this exit strategy for months. But what really solidified my resolve was finding her Reddit account. Sarah was active in relationship advice subreddits, and her post history was a masterclass in manipulation and self-justification. 3 weeks ago, she'd posted, "My boyfriend pays for everything and treats me well, but I don't feel that spark anymore. My ex wants me back and I think I might still love him. How do I handle this without being the bad guy?" The responses were mostly telling her to be honest with me, to break up cleanly rather than cheat, to handle the situation with maturity and respect. Sarah's replies to these comments were telling, "I know I should be direct, but he's done so much for me financially. I feel like I owe him something. And I'm going to visit my ex first to see if those feelings are real before I blow up my stable situation." My stable situation. That's what I was to her. Not a partner, not someone she loved, but a stable situation that provided financial security while she explored her options. I screenshot everything. Every message with Tyler, every Reddit comment, every piece of evidence that showed this wasn't a spontaneous mental health crisis, but a calculated plan to have her cake and eat it too. If she could document her deception, I could document my response. By Friday evening, I'd made my plan. Sarah wanted space to explore her relationship with Tyler without the distraction of our life together. I was going to give her exactly that. No more shared bills, no more financial safety net, no more boyfriend patiently waiting for her return. If she wanted to choose Tyler and LA over me, and the life we'd built, she could do it without my support. I started with the apartment. I spoke to our landlord, explaining that my girlfriend had moved out and wouldn't be returning. Since the lease was in my name only, another decision that had seemed generous at the time but now looked like a blessing, I could handle things without her involvement. I arranged to transfer to a smaller one-bedroom unit in the same building, available the following month. Next, I called our utilities companies: electric, gas, internet, streaming services, everything that had been in my name but that I'd been sharing costs for. I set them all to be discontinued at the end of the month when I'd be moving to my new unit. The car insurance took 5 minutes to remove her from my policy. Her phone, which I'd added to my family plan at her request, got disconnected. The credit card I'd given her for emergencies was canceled. Saturday morning, while Sarah was presumably enjoying her romantic reunion in LA, I began packing her belongings. I wasn't angry or destructive. I was methodical. Every item that belonged to her went into boxes, labeled and organized. Her books, her decorations, her kitchen gadgets that had somehow migrated into our shared space. If she wanted space, she could have it in her own space, wherever that might be. I took photos of everything as I packed it, creating an inventory. Not because I thought she'd accuse me of stealing, though given her character, it was possible, but because I wanted to be completely professional about this separation. No drama, no emotions, just a clean division of assets. The hardest part was packing away the photos of us together. Pictures from trips we'd taken, holidays with my family, casual moments around the apartment. Looking at them now, I could see what I'd missed at the time. How often her smile looked forced. How rarely she seemed completely present and engaged. The evidence of her emotional distance had been there all along. I'd just chosen to interpret it as shyness or stress rather than disinterest. By Sunday evening, Sarah's entire presence in my apartment had been erased. Her clothes, her toiletries, her textbooks, even the coffee mug she'd claimed as her own. Everything was packed into neat boxes stacked by the door. The apartment looked bigger, cleaner, and somehow more like mine than it had in over a year. I sat on my couch, looking around the space, and felt something I hadn't expected: peace. For the first time in months, I wasn't worried about someone else's mood, someone else's needs, someone else's approval. I wasn't calculating how much money I needed to budget for someone else's expenses, or wondering if I was being supportive enough of someone else's goals. Monday morning came with a text from Sarah. "Hey, I'm thinking about coming back Wednesday. Can we talk tonight?" I looked at that message for a long time before responding. She'd been gone for 4 days of her mental health break, and now she was ready to talk? After her romantic weekend with Tyler, after spending my money on expensive dinners and lingerie for another man, she wanted to discuss our future? "Sure," I replied. "I'll be here." What I didn't tell her was that by Wednesday, here would be a completely different place, and the life she expected to return to would no longer exist. If Sarah thought she could use me as her backup plan while exploring other options, she was about to learn that backup plans require the other person's participation, and I was done participating in my own disrespect. Wednesday arrived with the crisp efficiency of inevitability. I'd taken another personal day to handle the final details of my new life. By noon, the movers had transferred my belongings to the smaller one-bedroom unit 3 floors down. Same building, different floor, completely different energy. Sarah's boxes remained stacked by the door of our old apartment, along with a note explaining that I'd left the key with building management. At 3 p.m. my phone rang. Sarah's caller ID showed a local Austin number. She was back. "Marcus, I'm at the apartment and the key isn't working." Her voice carried confusion and the first hint of panic I'd heard since this all began. "And there are boxes by the door with my name on them. What's going on?" "I moved out," I said simply, sitting in my new living room that felt spacious and clean without the weight of someone else's deception. "The landlord has your things. You can coordinate with him about pickup." "You moved out? What do you mean you moved out?" "Marcus, this is our home." Our home. The phrase that would have gutted me a week ago now just felt absurd. It was our home when we were both living there and both contributing to it. "You moved to LA, remember? I gave you the space you needed. But I said I was coming back. I told you we'd talk when I got back. And we're talking now. How was your mental health retreat with Tyler?" The silence on the other end was deafening. I could practically hear her scrambling for an explanation, trying to figure out how much I knew and how to spin it. "Marcus, I can explain." "You don't need to explain anything to me, Sarah. You made your choice, and I made mine. You wanted space to think clearly about our relationship without distractions. I'm giving you all the space you need." "This is insane. You can't just throw away 2 years because I needed some time to figure things out." The audacity was breathtaking. She was actually trying to frame this as me being unreasonable for not waiting around while she cheated on me with her ex-boyfriend using my money. "Sarah, I found the screenshots of your conversations with Tyler. I know you've been planning this for months. I know you bought lingerie and had it shipped to his address. I know you posted on Reddit asking how to leave me for your ex without looking like the bad guy." Another silence, longer this time. When she spoke again, her voice had changed completely. Gone was the confusion and panic, replaced by cold calculation. "You went through my private messages? That's a violation of privacy, Marcus. You had no right." "You're absolutely right," I interrupted. "I had no right to go through your messages. Just like you had no right to use my money to fund your affair while lying about mental health crises. But here we are." "It wasn't an affair. We weren't together when I went to LA. "Really?" "Because you told me you needed space to think about our relationship, not that you were ending it to be with someone else. You let me believe you were coming back. You let my family think you had a family emergency. You manipulated everyone around you so you could have your romantic reunion without consequences." I could hear her breathing heavily on the other end, probably pacing in the hallway outside an apartment she no longer had access to. "Marcus, please, can we just talk about this like adults? I made mistakes, but throwing away everything we built isn't the answer." "Everything we built?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Sarah, what exactly did we build together? Because looking at our bank statements, it seems like I built our life while you lived in it. I paid 75% of our expenses while you saved your money and planned your exit strategy. That's not fair. I was in school. I contributed what I could." "You're right. You contributed what you could. Unfortunately, what you could contribute was lies, manipulation, and using my generosity to fund your relationship with another man. So I'm contributing what I can too, which is removing myself from this situation entirely." "You're being cruel, Marcus. This isn't like you." And there it was, the manipulation attempt I'd been waiting for. Sarah trying to convince me that protecting myself from her deception was somehow out of character. Somehow wrong. "You're absolutely right. The old Marcus would have waited patiently for you to come back from your mental health retreat. The old Marcus would have listened to your explanations and probably apologized for invading your privacy. The old Marcus would have paid your portion of rent while you were in LA with Tyler, just in case you decided to come back." "Marcus." But the old Marcus didn't know he was dating someone who would abandon his sister's engagement party to rekindle things with an ex-boyfriend. The old Marcus didn't know he was funding someone else's affair. The old Marcus was operating under the assumption that his girlfriend had basic respect for him and his family. I could hear her crying now, but it felt manipulative rather than genuine. Everything about Sarah felt calculated now that I could see the situation clearly. "Please, just tell me where you're living now. Let me come over so we can talk face to face. I know I made mistakes, but we can work through this." "No, Sarah, we can't work through this because there is no we anymore. You chose Tyler and LA over me and Austin. You chose deception over honesty. You chose to treat me like a backup plan rather than a partner. Those aren't mistakes. Those are character revelations. So what? You're just going to disappear after everything we meant to each other? I'm giving you exactly what you asked for. Space. Permanent space. You're free to pursue your relationship with Tyler without any distractions from your stable situation." The fact that I'd quoted her own words from her Reddit post clearly hit home, because her crying intensified. How did we get here, Marcus? How did it all go so wrong? For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered my sister asking where Sarah was at the engagement party. I remembered my mom talking about how much Sarah valued family. I remembered the champagne glasses in her Instagram story, while my family was missing her presence at their celebration. It went wrong when you decided to lie to me about needing space for mental health while planning a romantic reunion with your ex. It went wrong when you let my family think you had an emergency while you were partying in West Hollywood. It went wrong when you chose to treat someone who loved you like a financial convenience rather than a human being. I never meant for it to happen this way. Maybe not, but it did happen this way, and now we both have to live with the consequences. You wanted to see if the grass was greener with Tyler? Now you get to find out, without me as your safety net. I hung up the phone and immediately blocked her number. No more explanations, no more justifications, no more opportunities for manipulation. Sarah had made her choice when she booked that flight to LA. Everything that happened after that was just the natural consequence of her decision. My phone buzzed with texts from unknown numbers, probably Sarah borrowing other people's phones to try to reach me. I blocked each one without reading them. She'd had weeks to be honest with me about her feelings and her plans. The time for conversation had passed. That evening, I sat in my new apartment, eating takeout and watching Netflix, feeling something I hadn't experienced in months: complete peace. No one was coming home in a bad mood that I'd have to manage. No one was expecting me to solve their problems or fund their lifestyle. No one was lying to my face while planning their exit strategy. For the first time since Sarah left for LA, I felt like myself again, and I realized that the person I was when I wasn't being used and manipulated was someone I actually liked quite a bit. The aftermath began within hours. By Thursday morning, my phone was buzzing with calls from numbers numbers I didn't recognize. When I finally answered one, thinking it might be work-related, I heard Sarah's voice, desperate and shaky. "Marcus, please, you have to talk to me. I can't afford the apartment by myself. I don't have anywhere to go." I hung up immediately and added that number to my block list, but the calls kept coming from different numbers. Her friends, her classmates, even her professor's office number. Sarah was clearly making the rounds, trying to find any way to reach me. The desperation was telling. In all her careful planning of her LA reunion with Tyler, she'd apparently never considered what would happen if I stopped being her safety net. The reality of rent, utilities, and living expenses without my 75% contribution was hitting her like a freight train. Friday afternoon, Emma called me. "Marcus, what's going on? Sarah's been calling Mom and Dad asking for your new address. She sounds really upset." I'd been dreading this conversation but knew it was inevitable. My family deserved to know the truth, especially after they'd been worried about Sarah's supposed family emergency. "Emma, there's something I need to tell you about why Sarah really missed your engagement party." I laid out everything. The LA trip, Tyler, the months of planning her exit strategy, the lies about mental health, the discovery of her affair. Emma listened in shocked silence as I explained how Sarah had abandoned us all for a romantic weekend with her ex-boyfriend. "Oh my God, Marcus, I'm so sorry. We all thought. We were so worried about her family emergency. Mom even sent flowers to her parents' house." The fact that my mother had sent flowers to Sarah's parents, who probably had no idea what was happening, just reinforced how thorough Sarah's deception had been. "I can't believe she let us all worry about her while she was partying in LA, Emma continued, her voice getting angrier. "And she missed my engagement party for that? Marcus, I'm so proud of you for not putting up with that. Having my sister's support meant everything to me. I just couldn't let her treat our family like that, and then come back pretending nothing happened." "Good. And if she calls us again, we'll tell her exactly what we think about people who lie to families that care about them." That weekend, I learned through mutual friends that Sarah's situation was deteriorating rapidly. Without my income supporting her, she couldn't afford the rent on our old apartment. The landlord had given her until Monday to either pay the full amount or vacate. She'd apparently spent her weekend calling everyone we knew, trying to find someone who could help her financially or give her a place to stay. My friend Mike, who worked with Sarah at the coffee shop, called me Saturday night. "Dude, Sarah came into work today asking if I knew how to reach you. She was crying, saying you'd blocked her everywhere and that she was going to be homeless." "What happened?" I gave Mike the condensed version, and his reaction was immediate. "Wait, she was cheating on you while you were paying her bills, and she abandoned your sister's engagement for it? Marcus, that's messed up. I mean, she seemed cool, but that's really messed up." The validation from our mutual friends was unexpected, but welcome. I'd been worried that Sarah would spin the situation to make me look like the villain, but the facts spoke for themselves. It's hard to make someone look bad for refusing to fund their affair. Sunday evening brought the most desperate attempt yet. My building's front desk called to tell me someone was in the lobby asking to see me, claiming to be my girlfriend. I told them I didn't have a girlfriend and to ask the person to leave. Through my window, I watched Sarah pace outside the building for over an hour, occasionally looking up at the windows as if she could figure out which apartment was mine. Monday morning, I got a text from an unknown number. "Marcus, it's Sarah. Tyler didn't work out. I made a huge mistake. I'm staying at my friend Jessica's couch, but I can't afford rent anywhere. Can we please just talk? I'll do anything to fix this." The irony was almost laughable. Tyler, the great love she'd risked everything for, had apparently sent her packing after a few days. The exciting relationship she'd left me for had fizzled out, and now she was facing the consequences of her choices without a backup plan. I didn't respond to the text, but I screenshot it and saved it with all the other evidence. If Sarah ever tried to rewrite history or claim I'd abandoned her unfairly, I had a complete record of her manipulative behavior. Tuesday brought news through the coffee shop grapevine that Sarah had been forced to move back in with her parents in Houston. At 26 years old, with a master's degree nearly complete, she was back in her childhood bedroom because she'd gambled away a stable relationship for a weekend with an ex who didn't want her back. Wednesday, exactly 1 week after her panicked call about the apartment key not working, I got another message from a new number. "Marcus, I know you probably won't read this, but I need you to know that I understand now how badly I hurt you. I lost everything. My relationship with Tyler, my apartment, my independence, and worst of all, I lost you and your family who treated me better than I deserved. I don't expect forgiveness, but I need you to know that I realize what I threw away." Reading that message, I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication, no sadness, just nothing. The woman who'd sent it felt like a stranger to me now, someone whose poor decisions had briefly intersected with my life, but who was no no longer my concern. Thursday brought a call from my mom. Marcus, honey, Sarah's mother called me today. She wanted to understand what happened because Sarah came home very upset and won't explain why you two broke up. I told her she should ask her daughter about that. Even Sarah's own parents were being kept in the dark about her behavior. She was apparently maintaining the fiction that our breakup was somehow mutual or my fault, rather than taking responsibility for her choices. I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself, my mom continued. Your father and I raised you to be generous and kind, but we also raised you to have self-respect. Sarah took advantage of your good heart, and you were right to protect yourself. By the end of that week, exactly 2 weeks after Sarah had left for her mental health retreat, the transformation was complete. I was living in my own space, paying only my own bills, answerable only to myself. My bank account was healthier. My stress levels were lower, and my social calendar was filling up with activities I'd neglected while I was busy managing someone else's emotions and finances. The friends who'd sided with Sarah had revealed themselves and been quietly removed from my life. The friends who'd supported my decision to protect myself had grown closer. My family had rallied around me with love and righteous anger on my behalf. And most importantly, I'd learned that I was capable of making hard decisions to protect my own well-being, even when it meant disappointing someone I'd cared about. Sarah had wanted space to explore her options without consequences. Instead, she'd lost her home, her relationship with Tyler, her connection to my family, and any chance of reconciliation with me. She'd traded a stable, loving relationship for a couch at her parents' house, and the knowledge that she'd destroyed something good for something that turned out to be worthless. Meanwhile, I was discovering what it felt like to be valued rather than used, to be chosen rather than settled for, and to live without constantly wondering if I was doing enough for someone who was already planning their exit strategy. 6 months later, I'm sitting in my favorite coffee shop, not the one where Sarah used to work, but a new place I discovered in my neighborhood. Writing this story and reflecting on how dramatically my life has changed. The difference between who I was then and who I am now feels like comparing a shadow to the actual person. My new apartment became truly mine within weeks. I painted the walls colors I actually liked, bought furniture that reflected my taste rather than compromising with someone else's preferences, and created a space that felt authentically like home. For the first time in years, every single item in my living space was something I had chosen and paid for myself. The freedom was intoxicating. Financially, the change was immediate and dramatic. Without supporting someone else's lifestyle, I was able to increase my savings, invest in my retirement, and even book a solo trip to Japan that I'd been dreaming about for years. The $20 I'd spent supporting Sarah's life while she planned her exit, I made that back in 4 months just by living within my own means. Professionally, my performance at work improved noticeably. Without the constant stress of managing someone else's emotions and dishonesty, I was more focused, more creative, and more collaborative with my team. I even got promoted to senior engineer with a significant salary increase, something that probably wouldn't have happened when I was distracted by relationship drama. But the biggest changes were personal. I started dating again after 3 months, and the difference in how I approached relationships was night and day. I was no longer desperate to prove my worth through generosity. I was no longer willing to ignore red flags in the name of compassion. I had learned to value myself enough to expect reciprocal respect and genuine interest from potential partners. The woman I'm seeing now, Jennifer, is a fellow engineer who insisted on splitting expenses from our first date and who would never dream of lying about family emergencies to pursue other men. More importantly, she chose me clearly and consistently, without needing space to compare me to other options. The contrast with Sarah was so stark, it was almost funny. Emma's wedding last month was beautiful, and Sarah's absence felt like a blessing rather than a loss. Jennifer fits seamlessly into my family, genuinely enjoying their company rather than tolerating it. Watching Jennifer laugh with my parents and swap stories with Emma, I realized how forced and performative Sarah's interactions with my family had always been. "I'm so glad you didn't waste any more time on her," Emma told me during the reception. "Jennifer actually wants to be here." Sarah always looked like she was counting minutes until she could leave. My parents, who had initially been sad about Sarah's departure, were now openly grateful that I'd escaped what they could see in hindsight had been a one-sided relationship. "We liked Sarah," my dad said during a quiet moment at the wedding, "but we love seeing you happy, and you're genuinely happy now in a way you weren't before." He was right. The happiness I felt now was different from what I'd experienced with Sarah. With Sarah, my happiness had been dependent on her mood, her approval, her presence. It was anxious and conditional. Now, my happiness came from within, from knowing I could trust my own judgment, protect my own interests, and choose people who genuinely valued me. About 4 months after our confrontation, I heard through mutual friends friends that Sarah had dropped out of her graduate program. Apparently, without my financial support and with the emotional turmoil of losing everything she'd taken for granted, she couldn't maintain her academic performance. She was working full-time at a retail job in Houston, living with her parents, and had apparently learned some hard lessons about the consequences of treating people as backup plans. I felt no satisfaction in her struggles, but I also felt no guilt about them. Sarah had made her choices with full knowledge of what she was risking. The fact that her gamble hadn't paid off wasn't my responsibility to fix. The last I heard, she was still single, and had been asking mutual friends if I was seeing anyone. When told about Jennifer, she apparently became very quiet and changed the subject. Part of me wondered if she was finally understanding what she'd thrown away, but mostly I didn't think about her at all. That's perhaps the most telling change, how little mental space Sarah occupies in my life now. For months after our relationship ended, she had been the center of my emotional world, even in her absence. Now she's just someone I used to know, someone who taught me valuable lessons about self-respect and the importance of choosing partners who choose you back. The lessons I learned from this experience have shaped every aspect of my life. I learned that generosity without reciprocity isn't love, it's enabling. I learned that supporting someone shouldn't mean sacrificing your own well-being or dignity. I learned that when someone shows you who they are through their actions, believing them the first time can save you months of heartache. Most importantly, I learned that walking away from disrespect isn't cruel, it's necessary. The old Marcus would have seen Sarah's desperation after Tyler rejected her as an opportunity for compassion and reconciliation. The new Marcus understood that her desperation was simply the natural consequence of her choices, and that rescuing her from those consequences would only enable future manipulation. Looking back, I realized that Sarah did me a favor by revealing her true character so clearly. If she had been more subtle in her deception, if she had waited longer to pursue Tyler, if she had been more strategic in her manipulation, I might have wasted years of my life on someone who saw me as a convenience rather than a partner. Instead, her selfishness and poor timing freed me to find someone who actually wanted to build a life with me, rather than simply live in the life I built for her. Her dishonesty taught me to value honesty. Her manipulation taught me to value authenticity. Her taking my generosity for granted taught me to value reciprocity. Today, as I finish writing this story, I feel nothing but gratitude for how everything unfolded. Sarah wanted space to explore her options without consequences. I gave her exactly what she asked for: permanent space and complete consequences. She lost everything she'd taken for granted, while I gained self-respect, financial stability, and eventually a relationship with someone who genuinely values me. Sometimes the best revenge isn't plotting or scheming, it's simply refusing to participate in your own disrespect and allowing natural consequences to run their course. What do you think about this story? Have you ever been in a situation where someone took your generosity for granted? How did you handle it? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this story, please show your support by leaving a like and sharing your thoughts. Thank you all for reading until the end. Your engagement means everything to this community.